is breaking. This is, well, I mean, maybe it's not news to the people that it involves, but this is one of the craziest things that I think I've seen so far in regards to the Trump administration. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you. Supposedly, there's a whole host of supposedly there's a whole host of emails being sent out. There's people getting fired, career civil servants that are being targeted, and this is giving some insight into that. So this is on r/Fed News. You guys can go check it out. This is from 5 hours ago. OPM employee here. We are not the bad guys. I am currently an employee at the Office of Personal Management, OPM. This is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I'm posting this because people need to know what's going on at OPM. I've been an OPM employee for nearly a decade and a federal employee for almost 20 years. I've never witnessed anything remotely close to what's happening right now. In short, there's a hostile takeover of the federal civil service. Let me say this in no uncertain terms. OPM has been compromised and taken over, the very backbone of the American government. The HR of all HR in the U.S. government has been taken over by outside politicals. In just 5 days, they managed to push aside dozens of non-political career civil servants who were there specifically to prevent the civil service from becoming the president's henchmen. The current acting director, Charles Chuck Ezell, is a low-level branch chief. He's the friendliest yes man you'll ever meet. He never says no. It's clear they pushed aside all the high-level non-political civil servants who refused to do Donald Trump's bidding until they found Chuck. Under his name, they've sent numerous requests to all the agencies to collect information on government employees that they see as a threat to their agenda. Instructions say to send these lists to Amanda Scales, but Amanda is not currently actually an OPM employee. She works for Elon Musk. She wasn't even properly cleared by OPM personnel security. Our CIO, Melvin Brown, also a career non-political public servant, was pushed aside just 1 week into his tenure because he refused to set up email lists to send out direct communications to all career civil servants. Such communications are normally left up to each agency. Instead, an on-site email server was set up. Someone literally walked into our building and plugged in an email server to our network to make it appear that emails were coming from OPM. It's been the one sending these various, quote, tests messages you've all seen. We think they're building a massive email list of all federal employees to generate mass RIF notices down the road. The non-political civil servants here at OPM are watching helplessly as our government is being systematically dismantled bit by bit. Even the inspector generals are being fired to prevent them from investigating the numerous whistleblower complaints we filed. Please share this and tell the world that OPM is not the bad guy. We're just as helpless to stop this as the rest of us and our fellow civil servants. Hopefully someone out there can help us, but it's looking pretty grim. So apparently there's been a bunch of emails that have gone out across personnel staff. And this is one of them. It's a memorandum that was sent out today from the Office of Personnel Management, and the people that are working there are saying, we're not sending these. Unfortunately for whoever this is, and this one is so this one basically is a memo sending out trying to get basically a mass list of people set up. And the metadata from the actual email that was sent out is linked to none other than...
Guess who?
I'll pull it up for you.
Heritage.
See it right there? James Stark. Or James Shirk. Heritage Foundation. Mm-hmm. This is another person, Noah Peters. His metadata was found attached to these. Noah Peters is, as far as I know, a columnist for the Federalist. So it's becoming really, really apparent that they're just going to circumvent the government and use outside people. This is the most insane, most reckless takeover I'm kind of at a loss for words because what's going to happen right here is what's called, I mean, this is very clearly circumventing the government in an official capacity, number one, by having Trump loyalists go out there and they're the ones doing this so that they can get around having to go through the procedural things. They're destroying the institutions that we built in this country by using outside people. This is scary. This is not a good thing. We have an insight into it, and the real question here is who's going to stop it? Who's going to stop it? Trump's firing the IGs. That's going to get hung up in court. He's going to put in people favorable to him that are going to ignore it. The question here is who's going to stop it? And as of right now, no one. There doesn't appear to be anyone there to stop it. They are dismantling government checks and balances on a daily basis. And I will say that I heard a lot from Republicans about how they hated unelected bureaucracy, how it was the deep state. And I can't think of anything that is more deep state than having literal, like people send out stuff on behalf of the United States government and pretend as though they're them. Jaden, thoughts? I sent it to you a little bit ago.
No, I read through it a moment before the live started. It goes in conjunction with the fact that the other night, as you touched up on earlier, the firing of inspector generals for more than a dozen agencies. These are the independent watchdogs that preside over interior, over defense, over transportation, over energy and state. I don't know how one can complain about the idea of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government and then hand select political operatives that would otherwise cover up and excuse said waste, fraud, and abuse and the very negligible actions that are likely to take place after this.
I think that this is more. I mean, there's two fears here. One is that the Trump administration successfully just throws out all checks and balances, and
Hmm.
then it's just colossal disaster. The second one is that what I believe it was Anthony Blinken. I hope I'm giving the quote to him. The plight of despots, where they take people that are yes men because they'll say and do whatever they have to do, and then they'll put these people in positions of power. They're wildly unqualified, don't know what they're doing, and as a result, you have gaps in knowledge and information, in the way that you react, in your understanding of circumstances, and so you make these big miscalculations based off of your lack of understanding. And it's important when we're talking like subject matter experts to understand that their knowledge base, their depth of knowledge, is the starting block from which they build their opinions. They could be wrong. Yeah, I could disagree with a lot of them, sure. But when it comes to like just very basic things, it helps if you guys are all on the same footing. You know, you don't want to have to teach math to someone that you're if you're arguing about
Hmm.
math, right? But we've seen this happen throughout history, right? Hitler's a good example of this, put in a ton of yes men, didn't see the obvious writing on the wall when it came to war production, when it came to fighting two different fronts. We saw this in Afghanistan with the Ghani government, where he was very concerned about loyalty. As a result, to be fair, I don't think Afghanistan would have survived regardless. But you see this where these countries, Russia would be a great example, having all of these yes men under them that just tell them what they want to hear uh, leads to an incomplete picture. So they invade Ukraine, right?
Hmm.
And it turns into a colossal disaster. That's what we're about to watch, where party loyalty supersedes America. And that's a scary thing. And is anyone going to stop it? I don't know. And unfortunately, I think the crazy part is that the only way that this is reined in is if the Supreme Court comes off as the moderates in America. Crazy shift in the Overton window. But that's currently what's happening is there are personnel management. They're sending out these emails, really, almost certainly illegally. But who's going to follow through with it? Who's going to do anything? You have Donald Trump that's pardoning anybody that will do violence in his name on January 6th, of which, by the way, one of the people involved was already shot by the police
Hmm.
at a traffic stop. One of the people's already been rearrested. I've seen numerous videos on TikTok of insurrectionists that have gotten out, and they honestly believe that they've been wronged. I saw one
Yeah,
guy. I
they
sent a
feel
video over.
vindicated.
Right. I sent a video over last night of this guy going, "I was in the wrong, whatever." I went and looked his name up. There's video of him crawling through the window with his son. There's video of him and his son crawling through the window, gallivanting around. But this is the normalization of it. You know, I've been talking a lot, and because I wanted to get into this too as part of another segment, but we'll just include it because it's pretty relevant. The United States is in a really bad position right now. It's in a really bad position. Donald Trump is bullying allies because personally, he feels like they have not done enough to help him, or that he's been slighted by them or whatever, right? Because you guys notice he's putting, in the beginning of February, he's putting 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. He's not putting anything on China, right? So he's putting these very clearly to punish his allies. And we're ending in a situation where, we look at the AI race today with or the last couple of days with DeepSeek, which is the Chinese startup company that created DeepSeek. It's an AI interface. Their tech is catching up rapidly. It's not there yet, but it's catching up rapidly. So you have the United States basically failing at securing the
Hmm.
things that they need for tech, right? And this is going to end up in China's hands. There's a lot of countries that are either going to be forced to or not want to do business with the United States anymore. And if the economy in the United States starts to go south through tariffs, through
Which it will.
deporting migrants, right, and not having the labor, which it's going to, the question is how long, Donald Trump is setting us up to only help China. That's
You
what he's
mentioned
setting
this.
us up to do.
You mentioned tech a moment ago. I
Hmm.
don't know if you saw the news on this, but earlier today, Trump had announced that there'd be a plan to implement tariffs on semiconductors simultaneously, while the U.S. seems to be disinvesting in the CHIPS Act. That seems to be their priority right now, is to get rid of it. So, what really is the future for U.S. manufacturing, or at least trade of semiconductors? It doesn't really seem all that apparent, and it
Right.
ultimately puts us on the back foot, especially when it comes to the competition of tech, big tech with China.
Right. And I know there's a lot of caveats to the DeepSeek AI, right? Like it probably costs them a lot more money. There's probably better AI systems in the United States that we don't know about. It almost certainly is. There are chips in development in the United States that are going to give the United States an edge, but they caught up insanely fast. Donald Trump is really just setting us up for the American decline, and people are cheering it on as it happens. Um, and actually, Karmic Justice over here, that's a great point. These GPU sanctions actually kind of help spur the innovation that DeepSeek pulled off. R1 is significantly more efficient than our frontier models. It is. I haven't seen any comparisons to ChatGPT 5, but if you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, basically, the United States has a monopoly on tech and a monopoly on chips. Well, at least it did. And China is producing chips and producing tech at an increasing rate. They're catching up. You can imagine if they beat us in the AI race, if they just pull way ahead, which it's a possibility now. It might be an overreaction. We'll have to see. Um, if they pull ahead in the AI race, you have to think about how much of an advantage that this is going to give them, right? Like for instance, um, if you think about like traffic has a financial cost, has an economic cost, right? And that economic cost is lost productivity, people sitting in traffic, et cetera, et cetera. So you can imagine that, like, for instance, if an AI could develop a way to have cars move more effectively through fixing the roads, through fixing the cars, through potentially AI driving systems, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can take that on a wider scale. You could take AI and you could create logistics, a plant logistics program, right? That could literally run how, like, it could bring in a ton of different information about plants and visualize it and whatever else, and then it could just create those models to run over and over and over and over and over again until it creates the most effective plant, right? Or the most effective car, or the most effective driving routes, or the most effective whatever. It's going to give you a significant boost in your GDP, in your economic power. Good example: fiber optics. 4G LTE, for instance, gave the US GDP a $500 billion surplus, right? Or $500 billion boost. So these things are going to matter. And Donald Trump is setting us up for absolute catastrophe at a time that we should be bringing in allies, at a time that we should be expanding. And he not only has turned the countries that were looking to the United States for some sort of salvation from their poverty traps and turning them towards China, he's also doing that to our allies. And Republicans are cheering it on as American isolationism and American first. And it's going to be horrible. And don't get me wrong, I don't like how international trade has turned out, or capitalism for that matter. But there's something to be said about having a closed economy versus an open economy. And Donald Trump is setting us up for the absolute worst version of our economy.
Yeah, you brought up chips a moment ago and the state of the economy in relation to that. NVIDIA is one of the manufacturers of that. The shares have gone down 12.4% as of today. Broadcom down 14, Supermicro down 8.3. The rest are down between 1 and 8 or 9 or 10 or up to 12%. Meta's down, Microsoft's down. This doesn't spell a very good forecast for not only U.S. investment into tech companies, but also abroad. And if this trends continues, I'm almost certain that some kind of collapse is likely to happen in the world of tech.
Right. And I'm, in terms of like the American economy in its entirety, it's going to get bad. I don't know when, and I don't know the severity. Could be that it gets really awful real quick and they stop and they recorrect course. I have a feeling that's not going to happen because nobody at the top gives a damn. Nobody at the top gives a damn. And I want to say this because I think this is a really important point that I was thinking about. There are a lot of politicians in Congress right now, especially Republicans, that recognize how important social media is and how important it is to getting Republicans elected. And they are playing with fire because they don't understand it. And it's creating this weird techno loop where Republicans won't speak up because they are scared of the repercussions, especially Republicans in swing districts, right? Because, well, if you go against everybody over there, you're going to get blasted on social media. So it's like forcing everyone into line into this big crazy cabal of craziness, and they're forced to vote because if not, social media is controlled by people that are not favorable to you. So we'll see how this all plays out. If I had to guess, it's not going to be very long. We may because of the deportations and et cetera, we may genuinely see a problem in the next few weeks of food shortages or food skyrocketing. It's going to be quick. But again, we'll have to see. So